Have you been thinking about launching a podcast for your business, but not sure where to begin or what to do? I'm Al Morenton, host of Podcast Marketing Secrets and CEO of Video Podcast Pros. In this episode, I'm going to cover phase one of creating and launching a business podcast for success, which is the foundation phase. I cover the necessary steps to develop a proper business podcast that gets you more clients and more sales with less stress. So let's get into it. Phase one of launching a business podcast is often the most overlooked, but I feel it's the most important. It's the foundation of the podcast, okay? And people that take the time to do it, to build out the foundation, they're the ones that have a successful podcast that gets them a result, establishing that key person of influence status in their industry and getting more clients that come to them and get more sales, more profits, etc. The ones that don't take the time to build the foundation, their podcasts usually fall by the wayside. They did a couple episodes and it was a good idea, but then it just disappears. And again, people that take the time to build out this foundation, they're the ones that have the podcast for the long haul that gets 20, 50, 100, 200 episodes. It goes for years and gets them a tangible result. Okay. So first off, the very first thing you want to do is develop a launch date. Decide on the launch date that the podcast will be set out to the world. Okay, very, very important. Over here at Video Podcast Pros, it's usually 4 weeks from the time that we start, building out the foundation. There's 4 stages: the foundation, tech setup, podcast build out, and podcast launch. And each one takes about a week. So that's why we put it out 4 weeks. And it also gives a goal, and a tangible hard date to strive for. So you get it done as opposed to having it be a good idea, right? And never, ever getting done. I know tons of people that want to do a podcast, and I'll talk to them a year later and they still want to do it, but they haven't actually bitten the bullet yet. So setting that actual date of the launch is super essential, and that's why it's the first thing that we do. Next up is the idea generation. So is a podcast going to be a hobby? Is it going to be a podcast for your business, a podcast for your employer, etc.? Over here at Video Podcast Pros, we help people to launch a business podcast. Okay. So after that, you go into the design of it, why are you creating the podcast? Is it to build your network, to sell more product, to get more clients, etc.? And then what format is it going to be in? Okay. Is it going to be a solo podcast? Is it going to be an interview podcast? Is it going to be co-hosted? Will it be a combination of all of them, etc.? So with Podcast Marketing Secrets, it's a combo. So I do solo podcasts and then also interview podcasts. I like to do this because a solo podcast, it showcases your knowledge and develops that key person of influence status. And interviews are super awesome, super crucial. You get other key persons of influence in your industry, you're associating with them. So that also helps to establish your key person of influence status. But getting an interviewee into your podcast every week can be daunting sometimes. So it's good to be able to fall back on doing solo podcasts and doing the interview podcast. So you're not trying to just spend so much time chasing people to interview all the time. That's the main reason why I see podcasts fail, because they think that they just could do an interview and that's it, and they stop the momentum because they fail to get people to interview for that week, or that day of the month, etc. And then they stop doing episodes and it just falls by the wayside. So having the combination of doing solo podcasts and doing interview podcasts, I feel is key. Like I said, it showcases your knowledge in the industry and helps you to set that key person of influence status. And it also takes a lot of stress off of you as well. Next up is the listener avatar. Like, who are you developing the podcast for? For instance, with Podcast Marketing Secrets, our avatar is a successful business owner or entrepreneur or CEO that's been in the business 10 plus years, minimum of $1 million in profits for the business per year, or at least $100,000 in take-home salary. They're either a key person of influence in their industry, or they have the capabilities, these or components and desire to become one. They want to grow and scale their business with a podcast, not become a monetized creator. They want to create and nurture a community for the long haul, and they have something of great value to offer the world. Okay. Once you develop the avatar, then you will set the goal of how are you going to serve your avatar. So with Podcast Marketing Secrets, I produce Podcast Marketing Secrets to help business coaches and entrepreneurs to market their business with a podcast, become a key person of influence in their industry, and get their ideal clients to come to them. So super important to develop these assets, okay? Next up is, what's the show going to be called? What's the show name? Over here we have Podcast Marketing Secrets. So it doesn't have to be some super fancy thing, but it has to be something that when people read it, when they see the graphic for your podcast, they see the title of it and it said, hey, that might be for me. And then when they'll click into it, and then they could read the tagline for your podcast, and then they'll know for sure whether it's for them or not. And you don't want to just reach out to anybody. You want to attract specific people that will actually have the potential of doing business with you and help you to grow and scale your business, get a tangible result from the podcast. So our tagline is how to market your business with a podcast, become a key person of influence in your industry, and get your ideal clients to come to you. Okay, so super simple, super direct, and it lets people know if the podcast is for them or not. Okay, next up is the release schedule. So you want to release the podcast on the same day of the month or same day of the week and at a specific time. So doing that, it helps the listeners, to be comfortable, right? They have something to look forward to. It also shows them that you are on point, that you deliver, week in and week out, month in and month out, and they can depend on you. It helps to increase the know, like, and trust factor with them. So when they're ready to do business, they just simply set the discovery call and they're just ready to hand you the money. You don't have to go back and forth, do all these crazy sales tactics, etc. You've already sold them through the podcast. So it's super awesome. And just doing things like having a release schedule, it keeps you on point, number one, but like I said, it helps the listener or prospect to be comfortable and know, like, and trust you better. One other thing is show notables. I don't see many people do this, but it's a crucial part as well. It's almost like a tagline, but much more condensed, like just basically one sentence. So I have two show notables for Podcast Marketing Secrets. The first one is how to attract more clients and make more sales with a business podcast. The other one is we build business podcasts that attract more clients and make more sales. So super simple, super direct, and it lets people know, again, if it's for them or not, if your podcast is for them or not. So you just have the people that can do business with you and help you to grow your business listening to your podcast. Okay. So next up is the calls to action. So having calls to action in your podcast is super essential because it actually helps you to get a tangible result. Remember, we're not just doing this for fun or just to say, hey, look, I have a podcast and I'm fancy. You want to actually get a tangible result, get people to book calls with you and to, become clients, buy product, make more sales, get more profits in your bank account, etc. Okay, so it's good to have at least one call to action. I like to have like 2, 3, 4 calls to action so you could switch them out and get different results for the podcast. And again, they are super simple, like sign up for my email list, subscribe to our channel, leave a review, book a discovery call. Those are the ones for Podcast Marketing Secrets. And it helps to actually grow your business and get results for the business. Okay. Next up is the intro and outro. that's a really key to have the outline for the intro and outro developed right now during the foundation phase, so you know what to expect for the podcast moving forward. There's a few different decisions, is it going to have music or not? Where's the music going to be obtained from? And then what's the format of the intro and what's the format for the outro? Okay. So super essential, and it helps with the podcast flow. So you're not having to recreate the wheel every time that you do an episode. You have the format for the intro, the format for the outro, and you just plug in the information from that particular episode, and it's created super easy, super quickly. You record that and just move on. So you're not having to spend a ton of time, and the podcast is not a burden to you. It's an actual asset. Okay. And to further that, segmenting the podcast is super key. Having the structure and segments in a podcast episode is super key for your peace of mind, and then the peace of mind of the listener or viewer or potential client, right? So what I mean by that is, most people, like, they'll try to do interviews only, and then they try to, vomit out a bunch of information over 30 or 60 minutes every month, and they don't have a real flow to it. So having segments, like the intro, the outro, but actually within the podcast itself, the meat of the podcast. So for instance, with Podcast Marketing Secrets, we have like what's new in podcast land. Then the next segment is the business of podcasting. And the next segment is attraction marketing, getting clients to seek you out. And then the next segment is either the guest interview or the presentation that I make for that week. Okay. So having that, it helps, again, the listener or prospect to be comfortable. Some people will just like one of the segments. They might not like every segment, but they come in and they listen just for that segment, and you'll get more listeners, more viewers, etc., to come into your podcast, into your ecosphere. And then like I said, it also helps to develop that know, like, and trust factor, because they see the structure of your podcast, that you're on point, and they feel that when you are doing business with them, that you're going to be on point as well with the business. Okay. So that's why having this foundation is super crucial. It doesn't just save you time, but it actually helps to develop that key person of influence status and get people pre-sold by the time that they actually book a discovery call with you. Okay. So next up is cover art. So the cover art it's a crucial key to the podcast, because it's the first thing that people see, and it's going to draw people in. So it doesn't have to be super fancy, but it just has to be on point and just to deliver the message of what your podcast is. And you have to decide, who's going to do it. And, do you have a graphic designer in-house? If you hired us, Video Podcast Pros, and we take care of that for you. We're really good at that, etc. Okay. And then next up is the podcast description. Okay. So the podcast description it's super crucial to have a well thought out description for your podcast. And this is the written portion. This isn't the intro or the outro. This is the written description that people will see, like on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, etc. Wherever they find your podcast at, then they're able to read that description, and they'll know for sure whether the podcast is for them or not, right? So with Podcast Marketing Secrets, our description is Podcast Marketing Secrets is for entrepreneurs, coaches, and CEOs who are looking to grow their business with a podcast, become a key person of influence in their industry, and get their ideal clients to come to them. Okay. Featuring trends or featuring trending news, the business of podcasting, attraction marketing, and a tip of the week, plus highlight interviews with industry professionals. This is the perfect show to consume during your commute, gym session, daily walk, or coffee break. Hosted by Al Morenton, CEO of Video Podcast Pros, the show releases every Tuesday and also releases special episodes and playlists to help you grow your personal brand and attract more clients with a business podcast. Okay, so a bunch of information there in 3 short little sentences or paragraphs. And again, it helps people to know that they're in the right place or not. So you get the right people listening or viewing your podcast, and you're not wasting a bunch of time just talking to people that will never do business with you. Next up is having the categories for your podcast. So there's with a podcast, when you submit it to the different places like Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, you're going to have categories that it's set within. So you want to make sure they're in the proper category so the proper listeners and viewers can find you, the potential clients that you will have, right? So with Podcast Marketing Secrets, our categories are marketing, entrepreneurship, and business news. Okay. So after that, you have when all of that's developed, you create a template for that, and it makes it very easy to just produce podcasts every single week or every single month, right? And also, if you have a company that you're working with, such as Video Podcast Pros, then you could hand that off and they could know, exactly what to do and, the voice that the podcast is in, et cetera. So they can develop, and post-produce the podcast, in your voice and have a, something for people to look forward to, right? And it gets done very quickly that way. So again, it's not a burden to you or the people that are producing it. It's an actual asset for you and your business. And again, doing this foundation is key to, building out a podcast that will be around for the long haul. And it also helps you to develop that key person of influence status and attract more clients, that actually ask to do business with you instead of you chasing them around, right? And it helps it to come to fruition sooner than later, but you have your release date, and then you have all the different aspects of the foundation. So hopefully this helps you out and gives you an idea of the key assets that you need to develop in the foundation phase to have a proper podcast that will actually get you a result, get you more clients, get you more sales, and get you more money in your bank account. As you can see, a business podcast, along with its marketing assets, is a great way to get prospects into your ecosphere and greatly increases a prospect's time to value when they quickly understand that you are a key person of influence and the obvious choice to help them. However, creating a podcast on your own with all the steps involved can be very time-consuming for a business owner. Time that would be better spent working on your business instead of in it. And that's why I created Video Podcast Pros. We take the burden of creating and launching a podcast off your plate, and we get your podcast launched quicker and better than you would on your own. It's what we do. If you're interested in finding out how we can help you launch your business podcast sooner than later, then click the link in the show notes to schedule a discovery call with us where we will go over your options. In conclusion, a business podcast is a game-changing tool that can catapult your success and attract clients who seek you out. By establishing yourself as a key person of influence through your podcast and its associated marketing materials, you can build trust, credibility, and authority in your industry. So why wait? Start your podcasting journey today and unlock the doors to unlimited business growth and success. Remember to subscribe to Podcast Marketing Secrets on YouTube, Apple, or your favorite podcast listening platform to stay updated with the latest insights and strategies. You can also find us on YouTube and IG at The Podcast Marketer. This is Al Morenton with Podcast Marketing Secrets and Video Podcast Pros signing off. See you on the next episode.